before I run my intro reel, and I can see that we're live, and some people are starting to show up. There we go. All right, let me play the reel. I'm David C. Barnett, and you're tuned in to Small Business and Deal Making, the podcast, YouTube channel, and blog where I talk about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses while controlling risk. So if you're looking to take control of your future through buying a business one day, or if you already own a business and you're looking to grow or exit, you've come to the right place. I talk about interesting things, I talk to interesting people, and I answer your questions every week right here. So be sure to hit like and be sure to hit subscribe, and let's get to it. Awesome. Hello, everyone, and welcome. And today I'm joined by Brenden Kumarasamy from Master Talk. Did I pull that one off okay?
You got it right, David. Great to be here.
Awesome. Brenden, you're a first-time guest on my show, and I found you somehow networking online, maybe on LinkedIn, and ended up on your YouTube channel. And I watched a few of your videos, and I really thought it was fantastic. So I wanted to have you on, but for those who don't know you, why don't you give us a little bit about your background and tell us what you do and how the YouTube channel played into all this?
Yeah, absolutely, David. First of all, thanks for the kind words. Such an honor to be on the show. Thanks for having me. So yeah, for me, it was business school. So I went to college. I thought I was going to be an employee. I wasn't really looking to be a business owner. Funny enough, David, I studied in accounting of all things. That's what I have a bachelor's degree
Awesome.
in. So I thought I was going to be a numbers guy. And as I'm doing these accounting exercises, taking these classes, I start competing in these things called case competitions, David. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age are playing rugby or baseball or basketball or some other sport you probably wouldn't see me playing, I did presentations competitively. And that's how I learned how to speak. But then as I got older, I started coaching a lot of the students in that program, mostly just to help them get better at speaking. And I accidentally got really good at coaching other people how to do it. And it led to the Master Talk YouTube channel at the beginning and later on the coaching practice, because I thought to myself, no one's really sharing this advice for free on the internet. So I just start making videos online, and it leads into what it is today.
I'm very familiar with case study competitions as a
Oh, you
sport. I
are?
used to compete in that when I was in university as well,
Oh,
and
really?
so yeah, man, I loved it. And for those who don't know, who are watching the channel, it's basically a bunch of business schools will collect together a team, usually 4 students typically, and you have a time limit, so maybe it's like 3 hours or something, and they give you a package, and it might be a set of financial statements and a synopsis about a company and a problem, and you have to strategize the solution. You have to create, a PowerPoint presentation. Uh, uh, I'll date myself a little bit, or slides made of acetate, like that you put on an overhead projector, and then you have to present in front of a panel of judges who are usually some professors and maybe some experienced business people from the community that have been invited in. And you and the other teams make your presentations, and the presentations might be 45 minutes or an hour, where you outline your strategy and what you think the company should do. And then these, wise people that are watching you score you and decide who the winner is. And so I thought it was fun because it was like a quick, challenging thing, to figure out the problem and to make a compelling presentation. And like you, I enjoyed, doing the presentation part. And so you did the case study work, you were making these presentations, and you found out that you were good at coaching others. And so now this is your business today?
First of all, David, I've been on hundreds of podcasts and interviews. You're the first person to actually understand what a case company is. I'm a little shocked right now. I mean, you explained this so perfectly.
Hey,
So I love.
this channel is exceptional. We talk about exceptional topics and things you won't hear anywhere else. So that's the one thing I always promise.
I love that. I mean, you clearly delivered right straight out of the gate, David. So yes, you're right. So what happened was, I mostly, and you know this very well, but for your audience, because when I started guesting on podcasts, nobody knows what a case competition. So I have to use analogies like sports for nerds for people to understand it. So as you know very well, case competitions are designed as a recruitment tool for jobs. So a lot of executives are not just judges; they're company sponsors. So they'll come
Mm.
sponsor the competitions to see who's really good, and they'll recruit them into companies. So I was never trying to make this a business. I just started coaching people. The first 50 people I'd coached, actually, David, was for free because I was just helping the case competition teams get better at speaking so they'd win competitions and represent the school better. But the reason it turned into a business later, I worked as a management consultant at IBM a few years before I went full time into business. But during my tenure there, I met my business partner at a conference who's 20 years older than me. And he's the person who turned me on to executive coaching. He said, "You can coach a lot of high level executives and they'll pay you thousands of dollars." And I said, "Why would they pay me money?" And then he gave me my first 10 clients, and I went off from there.
Awesome. And so when you're working with one of your executive clients, like what does one of those sessions sound like? If we were to eavesdrop, what would you be talking about and what would you be, would they be practicing with you? What goes on there?
Yeah, absolutely, David. So the way I explain this is kind of like the difference between applying for a gym membership and having one versus having a personal trainer. So when you have a gym membership, you're paying what, $100 a month, $200 a month, but do we really show up to that gym every month? Not really. A lot of us don't if you look at the numbers. But when you got a personal trainer, you have no choice to show up. And what
Right.
my wise friend told me so well is that information should always be free, which is my mission. There's a lot of people who watch my channel who can't afford my rates, right? It's more for them to watch and enjoy my content, but implementation is the fee. So what I'll do is I'll hold the hands of my clients to make sure that they master a lot of the fundamentals of presentation techniques. And that's smiling, that's pausing effectively. How do we pace? A lot of people speak too quickly when they communicate ideas. It's vocal tones, right? It's monotone. A lot of people when they speak. So how do you vary those tones? And then finally doing them all at the same time. That's what it looks like to work with us.
We've got people here tuning in from all over. David says aloha from Honolulu. Says he always appreciates the knowledge that gets shared on the channel. Good to see you, David. And Victor's tuning in from Nottingham over in the UK. So look, we've got a global audience here today to see you, Brenden. And so like because I've got you here, I think that one of the things that we should be doing. You just mentioned, pausing, vocal intonation. I remember I took a theater arts class back in high school, and I remember learning the difference between pronunciation and enunciation and all that kind of stuff when you're trying to be heard and be understood. So, what would be one of the sort of key things that people get wrong most of the time?
Yeah, absolutely, David. For me, the biggest mistake, surprisingly, is consistency, right? It's how do we be consistent? We don't reward the person who goes to the gym once. We're impressed, we're admired by the person, or rather, we admire the person who goes to the gym 180 days out of the year. That's really the key. And the problem with speaking is two things. One, we don't know what to practice. Like, what do I actually work on? Whereas in fitness, it's a lot very easy to quantify what you do. Do squats, push-ups, things like that. And the second piece is measuring the progress that we're making.
Mm.
Because the measurement is really difficult in communication. What does being a great speaker even mean? That vagueness in the detail of communication makes people not want to practice. And that's really the biggest mistake I see is people don't have a systematic, consistent approach, which we'll talk about today on how to solve for that, obviously. But it's really like, what are the daily practices that we can do to work on our communication, much like a muscle that we're building in the gym, so that the progression is really easy to measure and we see momentum to get us excited to keep going.
Yeah, so I have done many live workshops, and one of the, I guess, the few quantitative sort of things that I can analyze afterwards is if people fill out a feedback form, right? And if I'm consistently getting a lot of positive feedback from those people, then I think, okay, well, I must have done a good job if they enjoyed it and they felt like they got good value out of it. But really, to your point, if you're doing weightlifting, you can tell if you've increased your weight by 10% over the last, period of time. So what then are you able to do if you can't really quantify your speaking ability? Like, what does that look like?
Absolutely, David. So communication is like juggling 18 balls at the same time, right? One of those balls is smiling, pausing, vocal tone variety, facial expressions. So for me, the simple idea has become, what are the three easiest balls to juggle that I call my easy threes? If we do those three things, then it becomes easy to practice speaking. Let's jump into number one, the random word exercise. Pick a word like phone, like theater, like chair, like headset, and create random presentations out of thin air on the spot, David, for 60
Mm.
seconds. And this serves two main purposes. Number one, it helps you deal with uncertainty. Life is filled with it as business owners, people looking to buy a business as executives. We're always in rooms, sales calls, conferences where we have to deal with odd situations. I'm sure we've all been on that prospecting call where the person asks us the most random question in the world. We're like, what is this person's so weird? Like, how do you deal with this situation? And then the other piece to that, and people can write this down if they want. If you can make sense out of nonsense, you could make sense out of anything. So if you can talk about avocado toast for 30 seconds, David, your subject matter expertise you could talk about all day long. But the trick here is you have to book it in your calendar. If you have kids listening to this, do this with your children. If you have colleagues at work, do this with colleagues. Before a meeting starts, do the random word exercise. And the way we measure it is we don't get points for doing it well. We just get points for doing it 100 times. And that's how we quantify the progress.
All right. So it's about doing the activity. So much like in goal setting, when if I'm talking to someone about setting a goal, they might say, "Well, my goal is to sell this much this quarter." I'll say, "No, you don't control that because you don't control that people are going to buy from you, but what you do control is you control, making 100 appointments or something like this." And so that's the thing you want to measure because it is within your control. And so simply doing the random word exercise 100 times by putting in your calendar for a block of time every week, like this is something you can control and you can do it over and over. It's funny because when you were talking about it, I was thinking about again in my past, in my college days. Again, I was part of the student radio station, college radio, back before podcasting was a thing. And when we would interview prospective people that wanted to have shows, one of the things we would do in the interviews, we would have what we called the composure test, where one of the three interviewers would just start either behaving awkwardly or randomly or like climb up on a chair and start hooting around like a monkey or something. And the whole idea was just to see what the reaction of the person was, if they froze up or if they were able to like keep rolling with the situation, because in live radio you you couldn't have people that would just be quiet. You couldn't have the dead air, right? And so this is interesting. Okay. So so you're doing things like the random word test with your coaching clients. Like when you were talking about the 18 different balls, I was kind of thinking about a sport like gymnastics, where there's judges, but they're looking for certain things, right? They're looking for different movements or whatever that the competitor is doing. And so you know do you do that? Like, do you watch people give a presentation and kind of keep track of things like their pauses, their the meter of their delivery and all this kind of thing?
Absolutely, David. And there's two parts to that. The first one is realizing that it's not really about saying, "Hey, Jenny or James, you're only able to juggle 9 out of the 18, so you suck," or else it gets too granular, and that which is the second part, one ball at a time. So when I'm starting to coach a client, David, let's say we take the random word X, and I'm happy to talk about the other balls, but going to the first one, it sounds so simple, right? Because it's not it's a lot easier than even 100 appointments, because at least for 100 appointments, which I totally relate to, is you need to actually book them. You have to create leads, either you create trainings, you have to get those appointments, and it even takes time to generate 100 appointments, let alone do them. But with communication and random word exercises, you could be done 100 random word exercise in literally 10 days. But I have never met one person who hasn't been coached that has done 100 random word exercises on their own. So that's really the point that I want to drive for people listening,
Mm.
is that seems like such a simple idea, but going back to what a top 1% communicator is in our industry, what I mean by that is simply, what are you willing to do that 99% of the people in your industry are not willing to do? And surprisingly, David, nobody's willing to book 5 minutes in their calendar, 5 minutes to do the random word exercise 5 times a day for 3 weeks. That's it. Like, not even every week for the rest of your life, just 3 weeks, period. And that's really where we begin the conversation.
Isn't that amazing? Like, you know, everyone who's tuned in, like, listen to that. I mean, the difference between, you know, being stagnant in your level of skill and not is just the willingness to create a recurring event in your Google Calendar that says, do this thing, and then do it when it comes up. Don't put it off. It's just doing the work. It's as simple as that. So what would the other two balls be?
Absolutely, David. So ball number two is the question drill. We get asked questions all the time in our life, at school, at work, on a podcast like this one. But most of us are not comfortable answering the questions that life gives us. I'll give you an example with me. When I got started on podcasts, I sucked. I was super bad. I remember some guy asked me, "Hey, Brenden, where does the fear of communication come from?" And I looked at the guy and I was like, I don't know, man. Los Angeles? Moncton? You tell me. I don't know where the fear of communication comes from. So I was a zero. So how did I fix this? Every single day, David, for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, I answered one question that I thought the world would ask me about my expertise, my products, or my services. So day one was, hey, Brenden, how do you overcome the fear of speaking? Day two is, where does that fear come from? Day three is, what tips do you have for introverts? But if you answer one question like that a day, David, just one, for 5 minutes, and you do it for a year, you'll have answered 365 questions about your industry, and you'll be
Yeah.
bulletproof.
Yeah, and even if you can't quite remember what one of those are, just the fact that you are now used to this thinking on your feet is going to make it so much easier for you to say something that's going to sound okay.
You got it. You got it. And then the other point that I usually don't mention on other pod, but I'll mention here. I got a lot of my question drill training in case competitions because you're speaking to really high level executives. You cannot mess up the Q&A period because if you do, you'll lose all the credibility you just built up in the entire presentation. You'll lose the case competition. So a lot of this was ingrained to me really early in my career. And it's just I realized that's one of those ideas that nobody really shares in the for the public who don't do those types of activities.
So what is interesting to me is that we're talking about preparing yourself to communicate and talk publicly. But when you talk about preparation and training, you're not actually one of the things I would have imagined that you might have said is go find places where you can speak to people, more frequently. But that's not one of the top things that you advise people to do. When should somebody be looking for more opportunities to actually get some experience in front of a crowd of people?
For sure, David. I'll tell you why, because that's a very astute observation on your part. The reason I don't is because the challenge I've seen with this industry, it's essentially I've seen a lot of gaping holes. That's why I thought I could do something about it. Is that creates a lot of friction. Because if the advice is this is how you go find a gig, I know from experience of talking to so many people who will listen to my message, they don't actually do it. So for me, that's more ball 10 or ball 8. Because if you're not willing to book 5 minutes in your calendar every day to practice the random word exercise, which you could literally do alone in your bathroom with nobody else watching, I'm hard pressed to believe that you're going to take more time out of your schedule to go find speaking engagements. So that's the why behind that process to really get everyone to take action. Because for me, speaking is a lot broader than just public speaking. So for you, public speaking is super relevant, right? You have a business, go speak on a stage, you'll get more clients, you'll get more sales, you'll create more impact. But if you're an executive in a company, yeah, you might have to give some industry conferences, but communication is much broader. It's how do we talk to people? How do we give people feedback? Which brings me to the other part, which is when we share an idea, when we communicate in general, and we get asked these tough questions, if we know how to deal with them, will be great. And then if we ever want to speak on stage, the advice for me just becomes create your own stage. Like the way that I started is I just opened a Zoom call. When I was a college student, mind you, remember, I didn't even have a business. It's just, hey, I'm opening a Zoom call, guys. Jump on the Zoom call. I'm giving a workshop on communication. I just did that every 2 weeks until I became the person I am today for free.
That's cool. That's really great. Um, so we've got a bunch of comments that are popping up here. Victor says it's amazing how simple it is to excel. Just do the basics extremely well. Absolutely. He also likes the random word exercise. Thanks, Victor. So you know, uh, communication, if we're going to broaden this from just talking in front of people, if we're going to talk about communication in general, do you think that there are any particular challenges that younger generations face because they've grown up in more of an electronic handheld, smartphone kind of world? Because I'm technically Gen X, I was born in 75. So I remember the internet in what came around really in my first year of university, and then smartphones, later on in my 20s. But some people have grown up with that kind of technology their whole life. They've never really had the same kind of, my first jobs were all like talking to people on the phone or going and visiting people face to face. And I'm finding that I'm meeting people who haven't had that same kind of background in their life. Do you think that there are particular challenges with different generations?
For sure. But what I feel is missed in those types of conversations is also the positive. So I'll give you the balance
Mhm.
to you. So the first part is exactly what you touched upon. Why is it that older people have a lot more experience talking to people, engaging with people? And the answer is really simple. Optionality and convenience. So you didn't really have a choice, David, in the 80s and 90s. It's like you have to pick up a phone. There's
Yeah,
cell phones don't really exist. You can what's a text? Like long distance phone calls were like $5 a minute or whatever the cost was. So you have
they were
to,
pricey. Yeah.
yeah, they were pricey. So as human beings, it's not really older or younger, it's just a human being trait in general, is we always pick the option that is most convenient. And that is not just true with business, dating too. Like why do you have to go up to people and ask them on a date in the 70s because there's no apps? Like you have to. You don't really have a choice. So what's happened with the younger generation? Is it because they're worse than us? No, right? Which I'm technically a part of, I guess, like in general, is it's more so the fact that they have more optionality. If I have the choice between asking somebody on a date in person and getting rejected in person and sending a quick text and getting rejected that way or an app, I'll just pick the easier option. Same thing with getting on a call or now a lot of these things are done through online meetings or just through emails that are shot back and forth. So that means the younger generation has a less practice time. But there's also a big benefit that younger generations have that isn't often talked about, which is it's a lot easier for you to meet people who have similar interests as you. So you're more
Mm,
incentivized to go deeper with those people. So my summary here, David, is technology is a tool, but it's a double-edged sword. And unfortunately, most people, especially younger generations, they're using that tool in the wrong way versus using it in the right way, which is to find amazing people. Like we never would have met each other if it wasn't for this medium. And now we have a friendship now that's built. And if I'm ever in Moncton, which I don't think I'll ever be, but if I am ever there, then there's a conversation that goes a lot deeper because we're in person. We know each other already.
yeah, it's so true. I remember when I was a teenager, I had a computer at home, and I remember hunting through like the classified ads of computer magazines to find like subscriptions to newsletters where other people would like share idea, like just the stuff that people would put into a Facebook group today, right? And just how difficult it was to find those types of communities and how much effort you had to expend in order to do that. And so basically it was so much harder to get any amount of depth on any one particular topic. And this YouTube channel is an example of that. I mean, we spend all of our time talking about these small business issues. And in the prior world, maybe there'd be a magazine or a weekly television show for half an hour or something, and that was like it. That was the whole access to the conversation for anyone that wasn't able to create that group for themselves directly. We've got
Absolutely.
we've got more people popping in. Kevin saying hello. Kevin's in Central Florida. Good to see you today, Kevin. And the HMS Surprise, who you see sailing over the horizon, says, "Well said about the double-edged sword of technology. Thanks a lot." So for somebody who wants to develop themselves better, I mean, obviously, if it's really important for somebody to be a better communicator and there's serious money on the line, then this is the type of person who should be looking at you for some one-on-one coaching, right? For someone else who maybe doesn't have the budget, and what should they be doing? Your YouTube channel is all about this.
Absolutely, David. And I'm a big proponent of that. You know, if you don't have a budget for a speech coach, that's one of the things you could do, right? You can go to YouTube. We have a great YouTube channel called Master Talk where you have hundreds of free videos online. And the other piece that I'd recommend as well, that is of course in the free category, is build a peer group around you. You know, what I found with my executive clients, honestly, outside of like the other clients they meet in our ecosystem, they get a lot of practice in with their family. It doesn't even feel like a
Mm,
chore. Like, let's say my 45-year-old senior level executive at IBM, when he's driving his kids to school, like his 8-year-old daughter or something, he's not playing music. He's going, "Hey, let's do the random word exercise, Jules. You give me like a pineapple, and then and it's fun, right?" And that's really the key. Integrate it in your family life. Find people around you. And we also have I forgot to mention this. We also have a free communication workshop that people could attend to,
and where can people find that?
and that's rockstarcommunicator.com.
Rockstarcommunicator.com. That's great. I'll include that in the notes here after we wrap up. And so, and another Cherie says, "Good afternoon, everyone." Hey, Cherie, how are you? So this has been great. Can you share any sort of examples of big wins with people that you worked with that have been able to really improve their success in business or their career by working on communication?
Yeah, for sure, David. You know, for me, the stories that always get me excited is the entrepreneur who is really, really good at what they do, but they're really, really bad at communicating their value in a way that people feel the same way about them. Right. So I'll
Mm,
give you a typical example. One of my clients is a PhD in organic chemistry. She is super brilliant, right? She went to McGill, got all the right accolades, has an amazing product, right, around nail polish where you can put little glasses on your nails and you can change the colors of the nail polish with a mobile app. It's brilliant tech. So that women
wow.
don't have to they don't have to keep redoing their nail polish. And you have unlimited color choice. But the problem is she's really nervous. She doesn't want to get up on stage, at least used to, right? She doesn't want to do interviews. She doesn't want to do panels. She doesn't want to do podcasts like this. So yes, did I get rid of her ums and ahs? Absolutely. Did I help her smile more effectively? For sure. But I think the biggest result was helping her change her identity from being a researcher to being the CEO of a big company. And
Mm.
and by telling her, hey, look, it's the way that you show up in the world that inspires people to want to work for you, that gets you capital that you need to raise money on this, or else you cannot build this tech out at scale. And for you to sell more customers. If you go and give an interview in front of like 300 women and you give a really inspiring story, pretty sure 10% of them are going to buy what you have. So that's really the key. And I'm really proud of her success, but I have very little to do with it. I think all of credit goes to her.
It's interesting to me, like would would there's obviously a relationship between your communication skill and your self-image, right? And self-image would be changing over the course of time as somebody worked on developing these skills.
Absolutely. Right. Sorry, I didn't. I thought you just want. I wasn't sure, but yes. So yes, there is a relationship between communication and self image in the sense that here's the way I explain it. But then jump in with your thoughts as well, David. I got it from Ving Zhang, who's also one of the top communication experts in the world. And what he said was, if you're a 10 out of 10 talent, like a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 talent. Let's say you're an engineer, you're a business owner, but you're a 6 out of 10 on communication, internally you'll still be perceived as a 10 because people know your reputation. Oh, okay, wow, this person delivers great work. But externally, the world will perceive you as a 6 out of 10 because you're a terrible communicator, because they haven't seen the quality of the work that you provide
Mm,
clients. They haven't seen what you actually do, how committed you are, how many late nights you spend getting the job done. So the external world will judge you based on your communication skills. That's why it's important for you to level up your communication to match the talent you have as an executive or as a business owner so you get the results that you deserve.
what sort of things do you do regularly to make sure that you're on top of your communication game?
I mean, these interviews are a part of that, David. I get very little business
I
from
can
this.
see
This
that,
is
yeah, totally.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of these interviews to stay sharp with clients. That's one big piece. Second is, of course, I think the best coaches have coaches. That's my personal belief. So I definitely invest an arm and a leg in my one-on-one coach, and he's the one who's always giving me critical feedback on how to improve. Like, especially when I was much younger, probably I've been doing this for 8 years now, which was just a long time. So when I started, I was very immature, right? And I was dealing with a lot of high level people. So my coach really helped me kind of level up my maturity level. So it's easy. Now it's a lot easier for me to deal with those types of situations. And then the third one is to always recognize, like Alex Hormozy says, is if there's somebody who's beating you in any area of your life, there's a lesson you need to learn, regardless of what you think of them. Right. So it's the same thing for me. I always look at people like Grant Cardone, like Gary Vaynerchuk, whether we like these people or not, there's always something that we can learn from them that we're not implementing. And I'm always keeping tabs on how I could be better.
That's great. So, rockstarcommunicator.com is the name of the site where people can find your free online class that they can take, and then they can learn more about you there if they want to step up to that one-on-one offering that you have.
You got it. So the training that we have is actually live. So it's not a recorded session. I do it every 2 weeks. So people can literally jump in and I facilitate it. And then if they want to learn more about the programs, there's a CTA, a call to action at the end of that free training to just book a call with us and talk.
Awesome. Well, Brendan, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I think it's been great chatting, and thanks for bringing back all the memories of those case study competitions. They were a lot of fun, and I haven't thought about that in a long time.
Likewise, David, such a treat. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. We got more people in here. Kelly says, great idea for the 5 minute a day exercise. She's joining us from Arnprior, Ontario. Good to have you. And for everyone else who's listened, who's enjoyed today's show, please don't forget, give it a thumbs up. It really helps the algorithm. And if you think someone else should be tuning into these shows, share it with them. The number one way that people discover new podcasts and YouTube channels is by recommendations from their friends. So please remember to like, remember to share, and personally tell someone if you think that they might enjoy this program. And with that, we're going to say see you later, and I'll join you next time. See, I got to play the ad now. This is important. Special thanks go out to today's video sponsor, Mark Willis of Lake Growth Financial. Mark helps people better manage their personal wealth and business finances through the Bank on Yourself insurance strategy. This is something I've done personally, and I've gotten lots of positive feedback from people I've worked with over the years. Go to newbankingsolution.com to find a playlist of all the interviews I've done with Mark and to learn more about the advantages of these programs. While there, sign up to arrange a conversation about what this solution might look like for you. So, how can you learn more about buying, selling, financing, and managing small and medium-sized businesses? Easy. Head over to my blog site at davidcbarnett.com. You'll find hundreds of articles and videos, all for free. You'll find links to my books and online courses, and you can sign up for my email list and get emails covering topics that interest you and be notified of new videos. This episode of Small Business and Deal Making is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. And if you've discovered us today via the network, then I hope you're enjoying the show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss any one of our great episodes.